Hi, everyone out there in Pesquite Land. Stephen Van Tassel here for giving you another episode of Living the Wildlife. Don't have any sponsors today, so if you're interested in being a sponsor of the Pesquite podcast, Living the Wildlife edition, please give me a ring at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. That's wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. You have thoughts about the show? Want to reach out to me and give me some ideas for shows in the future that you'd like? Do give me a ring at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. All right. Well, I hope you all are having a busy and happy, safe summer as we're approaching official summer, a calendar summer here pretty quickly. I'm hoping that you're making money, but you're being safe and you're taking care of yourself so that you can keep around doing this for a longer bit of time. Today's subjects kind of got me stimulated by a posting my wife saw on Facebook. Of course, as you all know, Facebook is the fount of all knowledge and wisdom in our culture today. Yes, I'm being very sarcastic about that. I love possums. I mean, I think they're just cool. We don't have possums in Montana. They haven't reached this far north yet. Be tough living for them here in Montana, to be sure, but I've certainly caught possums when I was back in Massachusetts. They're a pretty cool animal. I call them a four-wheel drive trash can. So I just like them. But sometimes when people like something, they tend to say things that make them look better than they actually are. And one of the things that was mentioned about possums that, let me just get that right off the bat, and that is that possums don't catch rabies. Let me be abundantly clear about this so that there's no confusion among you in Pesquite Land. Possums can contract rabies. Full stop, period. There's just no doubt about that. Okay, so let me be clear. We're not talking about experimental infection where laboratory technicians are injecting the virus into them and seeing if they can contract it. I'm not just saying that they can contract the disease. I'm saying something more than that, not just me. I'm basically reporting the information that's out on the literature. Possums can and do contract rabies in nature. Now, does that mean they are a common vector of rabies in nature? No. Part of that is their personality. They're just not that typically an aggressive animal, so it would be unlikely for many people to encounter a rabid possum. That's just not part of their personality. Whereas people are more likely to encounter a skunk or a raccoon. So there's a behavioral element, but there's also a biological element. Possums, it is believed, because of their low body temperature, are not good hosts for replication of the virus in their bodies. That being said, possums can and do contract rabies, and that has been demonstrated in laboratory settings. Let me pull up a document here just so that you have an idea of what I'm talking about here. So I'm going to go over to my opossum folder here and pull up an article that I had just because I want to be sure I get this rock solid secure for you here. Okay. This is something we definitely want to get cleared up for you. So this is I believe it was a letter to the editor, something along the time, because I don't have the entire journal, so please forgive me on that. I was getting this off the web, and this is from a journal, just to kind of give you what the name of that journal is. This is the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association. So this is a high-end, state-of-the-art, top-tier journal for animals. Okay, this is the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association. This is edition, it is volume 247, number 11, December 1st, 2015. And this is page 1229, letters to the editor. So I was correct. It is letters to the editor. So the people who wrote this, the authors were Noel K. Diana of the College of Veterinary Medicine, Ohio State University, Columbus, Ohio. And the second author is Kimberly C. Mitchell, PhD, and Catherine A. Feldman, DVM, Center for Zoonotic and Vector-Borne Diseases, Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Baltimore, Maryland. And this is, I'm just going to give you an abstract of what they had to say, and this is what they've said. Between 1984 and 2014, the Maryland Health Department of Health and Mental Hygiene documented 12 cases of rabies in opossums by means of direct fluorescent antibody testing. The rabies strain infecting these opossums was not determined, but likely was the raccoon strain enzootic of the mid-Atlantic states. To our knowledge, there is no published literature on pathogenesis or clinical manifestations of raccoon rabies virus in opossums. In Maryland, in one Maryland case, an opossum was observed banging its head against a wall, growling and acting aggressively, and the public health report indicated the animal was acting rabid. While it was easy to recognize the abnormal behavior in this instance, in other cases the opossums did not have such obvious signs of rabies. In one recent case, the animal reportedly appeared ill. Another rabid opossum was found dead, and one other was described as behaving normally. The overall point of this rather short letter to the editor here was that we have to be careful of these sort of blanket statements regarding opossums, that opossums never carry rabies. Simply not true. So I want to be sure that our audience out there understands that anyone telling you that possums can't contract rabies is not telling you the truth. They can and have and likely will in the future. Now, that being said, does that mean we just go out and kill possums willy-nilly just because they might have rabies? No, not at all. The point is that treat any mammal that's a warm-blooded creature with fur and gives birth to live young. Any mammal can carry the rabies virus. Is opossums high on the list? No, but they're not off the list. If we're dealing with a snake or a bird, those animals don't carry rabies. Possums can carry rabies. So I want to make sure I really drill this home. I'm sorry for those of you that are, this is old news for you. I get it. I'm sorry. But for the new listeners of our podcast, I want to be sure you understand. Don't believe this nonsense that possums can't carry rabies. All right, is it common for them? No. Do they seem to be resistant to it? Yes. However, resistant doesn't mean proof or immune. Just means it's hard for them to contract it. I think one journal article I read said that they had to be inoculated, which means the amount of the virus that they have to take in is orders of magnitude into the thousands of times a normal dose to get to convert to rabid. I'd have to look up, see if I could find that article again. Didn't find it in my research today. Bottom line, possums can carry rabies. All right. So make sure that all of you understand that all of us should be treating animals as potential vectors of disease. So with possums, rabies is one of those vectors, all right? Doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them evil. It means that we need to be safe in our dealing with wildlife, all wildlife, even possums, as much as I like possums. All right. Enough of the sermon. Let's get on with a little bit of information. Today, I wanted to do a little bit more on the biology side of things to kind of give you a little thumbnail sketch from some of the literature on some of the facts about opossums so that we can become a little bit more informed about this rather interesting marsupial. So forgive me here as I'm turning over to my notes because I was reading scanning through some of these articles and trying to abstract information that I thought would be valuable for you in your daily business. Some of it may be a little arcane, but sometimes it's useful information. You may get questions from clients, and this will be sort of a little refresher for you as you're doing some work with possums. So their scientific name is Didelphis virginiana, and so kind of a neat name. Virginia seems to be associated with a lot of wildlife animals because of probably the research that was done there in Virginia. And Virginia is one of our first colonized areas in the United States by Europeans. So their distribution, where do possums occur? Well, they occur as far south as northern Costa Rica, and they are as far north as southern British Columbia and southern Ontario. Now, historically, they did not have that high of a range in terms of their latitude in the north. It's believed before the 1500s in the United States, possums never got as far north as the Great Lakes. However, it is believed because of human activity, one report I heard said that possums during the Civil War, were moving farther north, partly because of the train system supplying Union forces during the Civil War. Whether that's true or not, can't say, but it is an interesting theory, and it certainly would not be, in my opinion, an unreasonable assertion of that. So the article that I'm really drawing upon today is sort of a review piece a review article, in case you didn't know, is someone who tries to survey all of the literature on opossum research and tries to summarize all that and collect all that data into one spot. So you may have a study done on opossums in Georgia, another study on opossums in Illinois, and this individual will come along and read those articles and then try to synthesize what's common in those articles and what's different to try to have an overall picture of this organism we call opossums. So this one was done by a man named Gardner, Gardner, and he published in 1982. So a little old, but I doubt possums have changed that much in 40 years or so. Okay, so again, he points out their distribution. Now, what is their description? How are we going to describe this particular animal? Well, males are larger than females, and opossums grow throughout their life. So they never stop getting larger and larger over time. If they stop growing, they're dead. The total length, now you'll recall what biologists mean by total length is the distance from the tip of the nose to the tip of the tail. And so the total distance is actually, for males, an average, and this is Pennsylvania possums now, possums from Pennsylvania, 30.7 inches, or 29.7 inches for a female. So a male can be, on average, about an inch longer than a female. The animals tend to get smaller in size as you go farther south, which makes sense because there's that principle in biology that the farther north you go, the colder regions you go, the bigger the animal has to be in order to have a chance of surviving. Average weight for the more northerly possums tends to be 12 to 14 pounds. Again, we're talking about mature adults, full-on adults. Newborns for possums tend to be 14 millimeters long. That's really, really tiny, and have a birth weight of 0.13 grams, which is amazing. At weaning, in other words, when the young stop eating milk, at weaning, the body length, this is the head and body length, which does not include the tail, okay? Head and body length of a newborn is about 8 inches. So it shows you how tiny they are. And they'll weigh about 5.6 ounces, not even half a pound. So they're adorable at that age, Females have an external fur-lined pouch where the young will nurse, and they can have anywhere from 9 to 17 teats. So, which is kind of weird. You'd think there'd be a standardized number, but that's not true with these animals. They can have, females can have 9 to 17 teats. So how many young can a female have? Well, that depends on how many young make it to her pouch. Because remember, when they give birth, the young leave the birth canal and have to travel to get to the pouch. And if they make it, then they're good. They're going to at least get the nourishment of the milk. And if they don't make it, let's say they fall off or something happens, they get distracted, they don't find the pouch and they freeze to death before they get there, then obviously. So there's actually two issues. The young have to first make it to the pouch. And if they do, there has to be a teat available for them. So if they can't find a teat, they starve to death. So it's probably good not to be an opossum. It's a pretty tough life. I had one biologist told me once, someone asked him what was the average lifespan of a possum. He says, well, the average lifespan of a possum is dead. So the point is that 50% of the time, possums die before they even reach some level of maturity. So it's tough being an opossum. Adults have various color phases. They can come in various color phases depending on what's going on with that animal. And one of the color phases is cinnamon. You know, sometimes you'll see some cinnamon possums on Facebook photos, which is kind of neat. That is one of the color phases. That's not normal, of course. Normal is normally that gray to whitish look to them with the black legs and the white feet. And the white face, but there are color phases with possums depending on their genetics and what's going on with them. There are 2 white mutations with possums. True albino opossums have pink ears, pink lips, pink eyelids, and pink feet. And I believe they'll also have pink eyes. Now, here's another word. This is something I learned in some of my reading today, and that's albinatic. And that is a possum that's white but not albino. Okay, that animal will have what they call white fur, like a normal albino will. It's rather gray, it's white, but they'll have black eyes, black ears, black eyelids. Those will all be pigmented, whereas the true albino will have everything else pink and still the white fur. So that's how you're going to tell the difference between an albino opossum, a true albino, versus an albinatic possum. So you learned a new term today, just like I did in my reading today. So what about their physiology? Let's learn a little bit about their physiology. Remember I talked about how it's believed that their body temperature is a little bit too low to really be a good harborer of rabies. Doesn't mean they can have rabies. We learned that. That's not true. But their average temperature is 35.75 degrees centigrade. And they begin to show heat stress. This is important when you're trapping. They show heat stress when the ambient air temperature is 30 degrees centigrade. And if you don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, it is 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So if you're trapping and it starts the daily temperature is getting above 86 degrees, understand that raccoons are going to be stressed in that environment, particularly if they're exposed to sun or with box traps. You want to keep that in mind. Make sure you're watching the shading of your animals that way. Reproduction tends to occur between January and November. There have been the earliest recorded conception for possums was actually in mid-December. Gestation for the young, in other words, how long the female is pregnant before the young are born, is 13 days. And when she's about ready to give birth, she'll sit on her haunches and curve her body over. Okay, so here's her feet, and she'll curve over. That gives, so as the young are leaving her birth canal, they have a shorter distance to her pouch, and then they will climb to her pouch, and so she'll begin licking her vulva during this time as well. Litter sizes, we've already explained that there's some variation in terms of litter sizes because the young have to make it to the pouch, and there has to be a nipple for them. So there's 2 ways that they can die that way. But So possums can have anywhere from 15 to 16 young, although it's believed that 7 to 10 are a normal size litter. So the reproductive capacity is quite high. How many times a year do they breed? Well, in terms of North America, or maybe I should say America, they can breed up to twice a year. They believe that many only breed once a year, in terms of the females giving birth once a year, but they can have 2 litters a year. So you got to keep that in the back of your mind. When do they get sexually mature? Well, it's believed that females can get sexually mature within 6 months. That would be very, very fast. And males would be sexually mature in about 8.5 months. So how do you know how old the young are when you encounter them? So here are some key, the article had an enormous number of stages of development of young. Because remember, unlike other animals, they're in that pouch and are often exposed, and you can see them if you look to. Well, in day 37, the young will cry when handled. On days 55 through 68, their mouth will open. On days 58 through 72, their eyes will open. On day 70, they become conspicuously furry, is how the article described it. On days 70 to 85, the young will leave the den with their mother, in the mother's pouch, however. And on day 87, weaning begins at that particular point. So a pretty long gestation period here, almost 3 months. Not gestation, a development period, I'd say, for them to get weaned. In terms of the ecology, where do opossums like to live? Well, they prefer deciduous forests. Those are trees that have where the leaves fall off, with streams. However, they can live pretty much anywhere. And as you know, as wildlife control operators and PCOs, you know that wherever people are, you'll often find possums, provided it's not too hot and it's not too cold, right? So they don't seem to like deserts, of course, and they don't like really cold areas like here in Montana, where things can get very, very cold, because they will suffer frostbite. And so they're not as well furred as other animals are. Where do they den? Well, dens can in places like tree crevices, culverts, haystacks, tangled vines, crow and tree squirrel nests. Holes dug by turtles, skunks, and woodchucks will also be occupied. What is their home range? Well, they're not territorial. So they just seem to move along and kind of hang out wherever they're hanging out. So we don't really have good definitions of what their home range would be. Larger possums tend to den only when temperatures get below between 12.2 to -4 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, -4 degrees Fahrenheit, that's pretty cold. Smaller opossums, those are less than 4 kilograms. Now remember, a kilogram is 2.2 pounds, so 4 kilograms would be almost close to 10 pounds. Possums less than 10 pounds tended to den if the ambient air temperature was below freezing. That's 32 degrees. So if you're a smaller opossum, you are going to not be as mobile during colder weather as you were if you're a larger opossum. So as a rule of thumb, if you're getting temperatures down to 0 Fahrenheit, possums are really not going to be spending a lot of time outside their den. So how you're going to capture that, unless you're putting that trap right over the hole, it's going to be quite difficult, because there's not going to be a lot of movement at that time. How far can they travel? Well, one researcher found that a possum moved about 11.2 kilometers, and a kilometer is a little more than half a mile, within a period of 9 months. So pick a spot, and he traveled, probably 5 to 6 miles within 9 months from that particular location. So it's not a big movement capability, not like coyotes or something, or maybe even mountain lions. Who do they live with when they're denning? Well, possums have been found cohabitating with other animals, which is even animals that they prey upon, which is kind of strange. And possums have been noted to be preying on shrews as well as moles, which was rather surprising to me. Of course, they'll predate on bird nests. They love carrion. It seems the research says that they like the maggots on fresh carrion is something they're particularly fond of. That's why I call possums a four-wheel drive garbage can. They're just cleaning up the landscape. They will also eat other possums, and they will eat skunks as well, which is rather remarkable. So pretty tough. What kind of diseases are they associated with? So we've already talked about rabies. Rabies is not a significant one, so we don't want to hype that too much. But they are host to a couple of parasites, ectoparasites. Those are the ones that live on outside the body, and two in particular are the dog tick as well as the cat flea tick. And so it's the cat flea, not cat flea tick, cat flea. So we have the dog tick and the cat flea, and the cat flea is associated with typhus. So in more southerly locations, I haven't heard of any instances of typhus occurring in more northerly ones. The one I'm referring to was an outbreak that occurred in Texas that was associated with possums, I believe. So, but those of you in those hotter areas need to be thinking about, watch the fleas. And so if you have a client who's complaining of fleas, you might want to be thinking about, is there an opossum living in association with this house? Other animals can have cat fleas as well, like cats, but think about whether there's another vertebrate animal living in the structure that's bringing those fleas and causing those numbers to rise. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Possums seem to be resistant to the mite that causes sarcoptic mange. So that was rather interesting. I'd like to see if there's any continuing research on that to see if that remained to be true. In terms of their foraging behavior, I've already highlighted this a little bit earlier on in terms of their activity in colder temperatures. But let me give you a little bit more detail on that. It found that at -2 degrees centigrade or higher, now remember, 0 centigrade is freezing, 32 degrees. So you're looking at probably around 29, 28 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. Possums tended to spend up to 6 to 9 hours during the night. And some possums obviously more than others. Once the temperature started dropping from -6 centigrade to -2 centigrade, which is even colder, -6, let me get that specific number out here for you. -6 degrees centigrade would be 21.2 degrees Fahrenheit. Then they only spent about 1.5 hours foraging. So again, when you're starting to get to those lower, those 20s, the lower 20s level, possum activity drops off precipitously. And of course, if you're dealing at 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which is freezing of salt water, possums are not going to be doing a whole lot of anything at that time. So keep that in the back of your mind, those of you living in more northern climates. One more disease associated with possums that I wanted to mention, and that is called EPM, which is equine protozoal myeloencephalitis. Let me repeat that again. EPM, equine protozoal myeloencephalitis. This is a very serious disease. It's from a parasite that can be shed in the feces of a possum. And the parasite is called, let me see if I get the name of it right here, Sarcocystis neurona. And it's a parasite that's shed in their feces, and if horses are eating food contaminated with the cysts of this particular parasite, they can ingest this and contract this condition called EPM. So horse owners are particularly nervous about the presence of possums around their horses because it can kill their horse. Again, you can solve this particular problem by either population and keeping possums away, or doing exclusion tactics, and also working with reducing the attraction of the area to possums by exclusion and removing access to food. But it's probably going to take multiple tools and tactics to protect horses over the long term, particularly in areas with high densities of possums. And so keep that in the back of your mind in terms of making sure you're aware that if someone's calling and they have horses and they may not know that, hey, maybe there's possums around, they didn't know there were possums around. Not everyone's up to speed perhaps on this. It might be something to keep in the back of your mind. Well, we've covered a lot of material here. And so hope that helps you understand a little bit more about this fascinating creature, this marsupial. It's like the kangaroos, right? They're marsupials. The only marsupial we have in United States and North America, the opossum. And I hope you enjoy this particular animal as much as I do. And make sure you protect your clients, protect yourself, and remember, I want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. So I'm Stephen Van Tassel, wildlife control consultant. Hey, would love to hear from you. Do drop me a line at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Would love to hear from you, the good and the bad. Hopefully you'll have some good. Love to get some ideas on how I can help you make more money in your business and save you time and effort so that we can be the professionals the public needs us to be. Thanks for listening. Till next time.